Hello, everyone. Welcome to BIMS Week 2. You are now tuning in to Pathways to Earthseed, a journey through Afrofuturism and Black feminist ecological thought. I'm Dr. Jeanette Davis. I am a marine microbiologist, children's science book author, and the Chief Innovation Officer to Black and Marine Science. Today's keynote will be moderated by Dr. Tiara Moore. Dr. Tiara Moore is the founder and CEO of Black and Marine Science. She is also an environmental ecologist and the BIMS program lead at the Nature Conservancy. I'll now pass it on to Dr. Tiara Moore.
Thanks so much, Dr. Davis. And yes, thank you. Y'all, welcome to Black and Marine Science Week and this keynote. I'm just so excited to introduce to you Dominique Thomas. Dominique Thomas is a grassroots organizer, Afrofuturist, trainer, and scientist based in Harlem, New York. She currently serves as the training manager at the Climate Advocacy Lab, a movement support organization. She is passionate about weaving abolition work in the climate space and how we can build the people power necessary to care for ourselves and one another. As a Black organizer, Dominique believes relationships are essential to successful base building, and being strategic requires organizing from the intersections of climate and other systems of oppression. Her main objective in this work is to uplift the labor and stories of those who have been erased from the climate movement, while creating avenues for engagement, utilizing and organizing orientation where communities can empower themselves. In her free time, Dominique enjoys reading Black feminist writings, running along the Hudson River, okay, and cooking vegan meals. All righty, Dominique, I'm very excited to hear from you. Go ahead and get your PowerPoint ready. Everybody else, get your comfortable seat ready because you are in for a treat. All right, Dominique, I'll pass it over.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Tiara. And I'm so excited to be with everyone here today. And I hope everyone is doing well. I know that y'all have had an amazing week of keynote speakers and panels and activities. And I am blessed. I feel very blessed and honored to be here with y'all. Yeah, and I'm just really happy to talk about my organizing journey, Afrofuturism, and really the importance of Black feminist ecological framework. So this is my love letter to Black folks, Pathways to Earthseed, a journey through Afrofuturism and Black feminist ecological thought. And so, as y'all know, my name is Dominique, and a little bit more about me. I was raised by my mother and my siblings. My mom is my greatest inspiration because she really taught me to always be myself and to stand proud in my Blackness, but also in my womanhood, and to always treat people the way I wanted to be treated. She also taught me that the world would be unfair and often violent towards me. And I knew from a young age that I wanted to live in a world that was created on principles of justice, of equity, of love, and respect. I'm really passionate about books, and in particular, I love science fiction and Afrofuturism, and we'll talk more about that in a few. I think of myself as a multifaceted individual. I love to run. I love to ride my bike, who I named Olamina. So if you know anything about Octavia Butler, you'll know where that name comes from. I love climbing trees, and even, this year and over the last couple of years, I've been trying to get more into makeup. So bear with me sometimes. I love dancing and just the feeling of being free. And I'm really called to leadership because I know that in organizing, it requires that all people really take on a leaderful position to build the power necessary to abolish and dismantle systems that oppress us. So in my current work, I'm constantly weaving the work I do in the climate movement with racial justice and abolition. And to say it's challenging is putting it lightly. But it's really about getting people to think another way and to imagine something that they can't readily see. But as a trainer, that is my work. My work is to get people to have a deeper political analysis and to be sharp around power and strategy. So there's this question that comes up often when I think about Afrofuturism and when I think about Black people and our connection to the environment. And that question is, what happens when people spend their lives being fed visions of the future that don't include them? What does that do to their self-perception? Another question that comes to mind is, how can Afrofuturism and Black feminist ecological thought disrupt racial capitalism narratives and dispossession of Black futures and really build and bridge our connection to the environment and to water? So when I think about the natural environment and when I think about the mainstream climate movement that I have done a lot of my organizing in, the erasure of Black women, of Black queer folks, of Black trans people, of Black non-binary people has been very prevalent. There's this beautiful manifesto that was written called Black Feminist Ecological Thought that talks about how eco-criticism is the study of the relationship between literature, art, and the environment. It's an intellectual movement that began to cohere in the 1990s, but it really aims to draw attention that everything is connected, and specifically nature and culture, that our definitions of humanity are being rooted in our culture, norms, and our languages, and that a commitment to the health, the well-being, and sustainability of our natural environments. But this study is made predominantly of white men. And the text that they use to do this eco-criticism has been written predominantly by white men. But the author of this manifesto, whose name is Dr. Chelsea Fraser, says, and I quote, that African descended women across the diaspora routinely confront some of the most intense, harmful effects of environmental degradation. That there are several examples of Black women who are environmental justice advocates, who are organizers, who are really leading the fight against those effects in their communities. And that artists and thinkers of various mediums had been doing this work creatively, documenting the first ideas, right, of the organizers that we see who are Black women, but also who have been dealing with the effects of climate and the climate crisis, and that this erasure of them must be by design. I love this thought that Dr. Chelsea Fraser says, that we need Black feminist thought and we need eco-criticism because they're both necessary and mutually beneficial for understanding how limiting others' views of Black women's transformative potential across the environmental movement have been. That our connection to the earth and to the environment were rooted in something that was completely alternative than what comes to mind. And when I think about what that alternative is, it makes me think of Afrofuturism. So I really love this photo, and it makes me think of how Black feminist ecological thought is really about this juxtaposition of juxtaposing the experience of Black women and the dysfunctions of environment. So Fraser says that the ecological harms of misogynoir and anti-indigeneity affect Black women extremely intense, and that those effects also guarantee a destruction for all those who are directly responsible and indirectly complicit. In her manifesto, she shows this photograph by a photographer known as LaToya Ruby Frazier, no relation, for FLINT's family in 2016. And I come from a single parent household, and often we're told that Black women-led families are dysfunctional and that children are led astray. This photo of Shea Cobb, who is a poet, and her family, we see them as functional, as a unit, as complete, as organized. Shea mentions that her goal is to protect her young Black daughter from the poisonous effects of the Flint water crisis. And so this shows a Black woman really against the backdrop of her dysfunctional environment due to the effects of white supremacy and racial capitalism. And Dr. Frazier would argue that Black feminist ecological thought is about perceiving what new ideas, what new worlds are made possible when the commitments of these two movements are really enmeshed with one another. And so when we think about the Flint water crisis, it's a clear example of environmental racism and Black feminist ecological thought. Mariana Kopany, who is affectionately known as Little Miss Flint, is fighting for Black people to have access to clean water. And during that organizing of that fighting against the status quo, she's also reframing of this racist narrative of how Black people engage with the environment. She is a Black girl leader who is fighting against her environment. So as a trainer, my work is deeply nested in the creation of new worlds and those new possibilities. And this is why I've adopted this Afrofuturist lens. So Afrofuturism was first coined, the term, in 1993 by Mark Deary, who is a white man. And from its inception, it's had some troubled origins. There have been a collection of people who have argued that it's really bound by this white gaze. But I would argue that Afrofuturism in and of itself rejects the idea of the white gaze because it directly situates Black people in the future in worlds that are outside of systems of oppression. Alondra Nelson, who is an Afrofuturist scholar, says that Afrofuturism is a critical perspective that opens up inquiry into the many overlaps between technoculture and Black diasporic histories. Afrofuturism looks across popular culture to find models of expression that transform spaces of alienation into novel forms of creative potential. In the process, it reclaims theorizing about the future. She goes on to explain that Afrofuturism as a way of looking at the subject position of Black people will cover these themes of alienation, but it also looks towards these aspirations of a quote unquote utopic future. It is blending the past with these elements of the future, and that it's really rooted in delivering and imagining possibilities outside of what we currently see and what we're actually currently able to perceive. And so I like to come with my examples of things, right? And so these are near and dear examples to me about Afrofuturism. And so we have Sun Ra, who was a jazz musician and really blended futuristic themes with jazz. He also had this very fantastical story about how he was an alien from Saturn whose main purpose on Earth was to preach peace. Harriet Tubman, I see as an Afrofuturist. She's also my Sankofa. And so if you don't know, Sankofa is can be a person, a place, a thing, but it is the process of looking back to the past to fetch the lessons to bring into the future. And so I think of Harriet Tubman and that she had to trust in her faith, right, in the universe, that when she was taking folks along the Underground Railroad, that she was on the right path. And during that time, there was no manual, right? There was no guarantee, but she was organized and she galvanized and she brought people into the future she was envisioning for folks during that time. But she was also clear, right, that she had to leave many people behind because they did not know that they were enslaved. We have Octavia Butler, who I stan, and her stories come from an imagination that centers Black people and very specifically and intentionally centers dark-skinned Black women at the center of fantasy and science fiction. And so earlier I said that my bike I named Olamina. Olamina is a character from Parable of the Sower, who's able to create a future she sees and a world of living amongst the destiny, which is Earthseed. The Black Panther Party, right? They had to have Afrofuturist themes in their work because they were fighting for future generations. They wanted to ensure there was a suitable future for Black people. And one of my favorites is Drexciya. So Drexciya was a Black electronic group from Detroit. Their persona was that they were Drexian, which is this alternative Black history in which the unborn babies of Black enslaved people who drowned during the Middle Passage learned how to breathe underwater and created an underwater civilization. So if Afrofuturism is about futures, that really requires us, right, to develop Sankofas, to go back to the past, to fetch those lessons, and to come to terms that Black people have never been passive observers. This opens up new realms of political imagination and a rewriting of revisionist history. When we think about water, right, often we see Black people are dealing with toxic water sources that have been contaminated or in our complete dislike for swimming. I admit, I have a complete dislike for swimming, which I'm working on. But we know that Black people not only live near bodies of water in large amounts, but our culture has different elements of water deeply weaved in our ceremonies. So Black feminist ecological thoughts, right, and Afrofuturism, how I see them are that they are a part of the same thread and that they're weaved to connect us to different worlds. When I think about organizing, we can use these frameworks because they're helpful as a Black organizer to ensure that the future I want to see is rooted in the power and presence of Black people. It means that we have to be creative. It means looking beyond what we have been told is possible. Both are rooted in an abolitionist lens. So white supremacy is really good at making us respond to fires constantly, that we don't get a chance to recharge and reimagine. So part of my work as an organizer and trainer is really creating the space to vision. And from that vision, creating a viable strategy that tests my theory of change. So in my own experience, as a climate justice organizer, in 2020, I was a part of a coalition in New York City known as Stop the Williams Pipeline. And so on the screen, you'll see the proposed track for the Nessie pipeline, which would have carried fracked gas through New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and the waters of Brooklyn, Staten Island, and the Rockaways. Through some hard organizing and really getting community folks and everyday people to imagine something other than this pipeline, we were able to successfully stop it from getting the necessary water permits that were denied in 2020. So if this pipeline were to be built, when it undoubtedly leaked, it would have contaminated the waterways of many Black residents who call these places home. This is just one example, but as I said before, white supremacy has emboldened people to use environmental racism as a tactic to keep Black people from being in the future and in being present with resources and sources that have been poisoned, such as our waterways. So what have I learned from using these frameworks? So my life work, if you don't know, is about the liberation of my people. And I understand I need to use the knowledge I have and really be on this rigor of keep learning. I need to be sharp with my analysis and that I can continue pedagogy, right, of reciprocity with others, then I can do the liberatory work. So as I step into my role as an Afrofuturist and as a Black feminist ecological thinker, this is really a clear signal to people, my unwavering commitment and deep love for Black people. So systems of oppression really aim to corrupt the mind, the body, the spirit. I always come back to this question when I think about the Sankofa and I think about our ancestors. I think, am I in tune with my ancestors and what they need to say to me lovingly? Ella Baker, who was an OG organizer and just community builder, said that oppressed people, whatever their level of formal education, have the ability to understand and interpret the world around them, to see the world for what it is, and to move to transform it. So I think that makes me just think about Afrofuturism, right? Like, how can we see something different than what we see currently here? And how can I, as an organizer, make myself unnecessary in spaces? And so my theory of change really is around creating the material conditions for Black communities to build power across levels and strategize to imagine and create worlds for ourselves that are outside of systems of oppression. And this is really accomplished by awakening a organizing orientation that inspires and empowers Black people to construct our own Afrofuture that is rooted in abolition and Black feminist thought. So this past winter, I participated in this fellowship known as the Freedom Fellowship. And it was through the Weeksville Cultural Center, which is which was a Black community that was established pre-emancipation. And the fellowship was for Black people to explore oral history, genealogy, and family trees through cultural organizing and art justice. I was really nervous, honestly, to be in this space because I really had limited understanding of my family given chattel slavery. But through this process, I learned a number of things about who I am and why I do the work that I do. And so I learned predominantly about my mother's side of the family and majority of her family comes from Canada. And I found out that the family church that was built for Black enslaved people was a place that they organized the community. And Harriet Tubman was a member. That's why I'm so drawn to this woman. But everyone was responsible for a final project, and I created a cultural organizing zine. And I would love to share with y'all that zine. And so here is this another love letter to Black folks, and it's called The Afronauts, A Guide Through the Yellow Overground Railroad of Black Liberation. Just a little background, the zine informs different themes of Afrofuturism, but also my love for The Wizard of Oz, which is one of my favorite musicals. And so this is a Black liberatory zine, a love letter for all Black people. This was created with the understanding that Black liberatory spaces have existed in the past, exist in the present, and will exist in the future. In this zine, you will find the past, the present, and the Afrofuture. Be inspired by struggle, by words, by art, by liberation, by finding, by odes and becoming. You will find hope. And so we see that question again: what happens when Black people spend their lives experiencing visions of the future that don't include them? What does that do to our self-perception of the world of possibilities? So Olamina is a young Black Afronaut searching for the Afrofuture, a home, a place we have yet to arrive. Organizing strategy. When you are stuck in your work, whether that is developing a campaign or strategy, how do you use your relationships to build power? Haiti, 1804. Olamina has landed in the first Black space decolonized. The people birthed their own liberation, a revolution. The people don't walk, they glide. In Haiti, they stand tall and proudly. How long until the Black Afrofuture? They say, we do not know of this Afrofuture, but you should ask Moses. A swift wind, and Olamina looks up to find a tornado of white supremacy. It destroys everything in its path, breathing oppression all over the people. Olamina says to herself, the only lasting truth is change. She closes her eyes and white supremacy is swallowed up. Floating from the sky, cherry blossom lands in front of Olamina. She is the embodiment of Black woman, of Black motherhood, of Black overcoming. Cherry blossom shows Olamina the yellow overground railroad of Black liberation, which will lead her to Moses. How are you actively interrogating your own biases when it comes to power and who gets to create tables? Weeksville, Brooklyn, 1842. Olamina follows the railroad to Weeksville, a place of Black abundance. Outside of 1698 Bergen Street, she meets Roe, a Black person who has lost the CC connecting both halves of their brain. She finds them digging and searching for their Black pride to no avail. Olamina tells Roe they are welcome to join her on her quest to find Moses. The Afronauts link arms and fly high. What pieces of yourself need healing? Haiti, North Carolina, 1891. The Afronauts land in Haiti. They see someone standing still on the road, motionless. They hear a faint voice, ask for someone to massage their joints. Their efforts release Coco, and she is able to move again. She is a Black woman of the trans experience with hair flowing, cascading down. All the pain from oppression and hatred caused her heart to crack. She sought refuge in Haiti, before becoming motionless. Ro tells Coco to join them on their path to Moses. Who are you freeing if Black trans people are not being protected and safe in the world you want to create? Then what is the purpose of that world? A self-portrait in pencil by Tiara Thomas. An ode to single mother. I am becoming my mother, a woman who created life, a woman who protected life, a woman who sacrificed. The love of my Black mama is expansive. The love of my Black mama is liberatory. The love of my Black mama is, I am my mother's daughter. I am, she is, we are enough. BME Salem Chapel, Canada, 1925, a place where Moses prayed, organized, and led Black people to freedom. A small, white, unassuming church that birthed the lineage of my mother. It rests encapsulated in the sky, hanging like a Christmas ornament from the North Star. How do you want to embody the archive of your familial lineage? Pick someone in your genealogical lineage to invoke into your body. What does this person sound like? How do they walk? What brings them joy? Move, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1985. The Afronauts continue on their quest encountering Tyrone, a man alone. Tyrone internalized all the pollution to keep the land and people safe. He was present when the bombs fell on Move and swallowed all the toxicity to protect as many people as he could. He's hardened and wants to soften. Coco says Moses can help you. What organizing work are you doing to uplift the stories and lived experiences of Black people who have been poisoned by redlining and environmental racism? The North Star, 2070. Olamina, Tyrone, Coco, and Ro glide throughout space and time, moving forward and backward. They reach the end of the yellow overground railroad, surrounded by high grass. A small woman dressed in white, sitting in a wicker chair, awaits for them. The woman stands up and walks towards the Afronauts. She looks them over, and each one of them with insight whispers, Harriet. Harriet tells the Afronauts, the Afrofuture is all things at once, the past, the present, and the future. Confused, they say, but you guided us to freedom. Harriet chuckles and says, the North Star lives in all Black people. It will provide all you wish for. The Afronauts close their eyes and click their heels. Harriet whispers, the destiny is amongst the stars. What are you visioning for the future? What bold visions do you have? What is your plan to make these a reality? The Afrofuture Jubilee, 11213. A mind united, a heart repaired, emotions expressed, and a future realized. We arrived, we are here. We stood with Harriet, and every Black person was present. All genders, all shades, all size, all smiling, shining on us, all holding hands, all elevated, divine. So this is my vision. We have to create a vision for ourselves. So we're going to take the next few minutes to vision our own liberation. And so you can close your eyes, you can write, you can draw, you can do whatever you feel called to do. But just before we start a small visioning, let's do a quick body scan. So if you are able to close your eyes or you can soften your gaze, You're also welcome to lay down, sit, stand, spread out, do what makes you feel called to do. So just become aware of yourself, right? Feel your toes, wiggle them in your shoes or in your socks. Feel your shins, feel your knees, feel your thighs. Feel your abdomen, fill with air. Feel it expand and shrink. Whether it's flat or it hangs or it's somewhere in between, touch it and send it love. Feel your arms and your hands and your fingers and send them love. Feel your neck and your head and thank it for making you brilliant and loving and thoughtful beings. So now we're gonna vision, right? Afrofuturism is all about visioning and seeing the world that we want to bring to fruition. So we are world builders, right? We are creators. I want you to close your eyes and imagine we are in a world where there are no environmental injustices. There's no climate crises in our communities. This is a world with no systems of oppression. Get into that world. Think about how it makes you feel. How does your heart feel? In this world, what does it feel like in your body to stand here? Marinate on that. When you breathe in, what do you smell? When you eat food, what does it taste like? When you stand in the mirror, how do you talk to your reflection? What does it feel like to walk down the street in this community? What does the sun feel like on your skin? What would your name be in this world? What people would you belong to? What is your connection to water in this world? What is the connection to water for Black people in this world? How do you love people and how do people love one another? How do the people around you make you feel? Do you have a superpower? What is it? What is your profession, or what are you passionate about in this world? Keep marinating in that world, thinking about all the things, all the beautiful blessings you have as a beautiful human being in this world, and how you want to be in your Afro future. So marinate in that world, and we'll just take a minute to live deeply there. I want you each to begin to wiggle your toes, to feel your shins, your knees, your thighs. Thank your legs for carrying you. I want you to feel your abdomen, if you're able to feel it grow and shrink, and thank it for providing. Feel your heart, put your hands over your heart, feel it beating for you, and thank it. Touch your neck and your head, and thank your brain for being beautiful and for giving you the space to imagine something that is outside of what we've been told is possible. If you haven't already, you can open your eyes. And so, Black and marine science, all of you here are the Afro future. You are here and have reframed the narrative of Black people, of science, and our connection to water. You created something from a vision that you were told wasn't possible by racial capitalism, white supremacy, and anti-Blackness. So take that vision that you saw here today, and I implore you to go back to your community and think about what are other innovative ways to continue to create access for Black people to experience the joys of this work. I was taught how to swim at the YMCA as a little Black girl. Can I swim now? That's debatable. But I know a lot of little Black children that were taught to be fearful of water. And as an adult woman, I still have those fears. But this Afrofuturist space that y'all have created allows me, and I'm sure others, to explore the pieces of myself that need exploring without fear. And Black siblings, we have to remember that We are the ones we have been waiting for. The climate crisis is not going to be fixed by other people. Toxic water sources are not going to be fixed by other people. Environmental racism is not going to be fixed by other people. We have to look deep within ourselves and use the gifts we have to create the futures we want. We are our own salvation. I see Black and marine science as a homegoing to the receiving nature of water. Von Davian Wilson says that Afrofuturism is calling us to this, towards Sankofas as ecopolitics, of reaching back, of looking forward, of having our feet in the soil and our eyes to the cosmos. Each one of you is here because you already have been planting those seeds of visions. In your community, you have to strategize, be sharp, so that we can realize those visions that you saw here today. I'm just gonna say this really beautiful excerpt from Parable of the Sower, from the Book of the Living. The destiny of Earthseed is to take root among the stars. It is to live and to thrive on new earths. It is to become new beings and to consider new questions. It is to leap into the heavens again and again. It is to explore the vastness of heaven. It is to explore the vastness of ourselves. So each one of y'all, go out there and manifest this beautiful destiny of Black people entrenched with water, Black people engaging and loving science, Black people loving and being deeply embedded in the environment. Thank you so much for being here and for realizing the vision that you have in your mind's eye. Thank you.
OMG. Dominique, thank you so much. That was just so awesome, so beautiful. You, like, your words are just so powerful, and just I was just sitting back here trying to hold back tears. Yeah, so just thank you so much for just coming on the BIM stage, talking to the BIMS community, and just giving such a passionate and powerful message.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, this was beautiful, and I'm so glad that I could be here today.
Yes, you inspired me, because I had to get my put my lipstick on for the Afro future, because I came on crusty for the Afro past, but I had to get myself together. So YouTube, if you are listening, we do have a couple of minutes for some questions. If you want to drop a question, I know there is just a little bit of delay, but definitely put any questions you may have for Dominique. We'll take this time to answer any of them, but I can get started. I mean, you said so much. You said so much. So I was like taking down notes as you were talking. And I think what struck me is what we're talking about, you know, Black history and Black culture being so rich. And I think for me, sometimes as a scientist, it's like you leave that at the door. You know, you're not talking about anything that has to do with yourself. So how do we include this type of, I don't know, conversation in science and everything that we're doing, because I feel like it's so powerful and enriching. But you know, this is us going rogue, like we don't do this. So like, how do we normalize this content in your work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the starting point is doing work like this, right? It's like enmeshing, you know, science with, you know, science fiction or Afrofuturism, and really thinking through how you can get more people to be visioning and reimagining what we see as possible. And when I think about science, right, like science is about reimagining what we know as possible, right? And so just starting young, right? Like I think this is so great to to get so many young Black people to be thinking about science and thinking about water and thinking about access and thinking about organizing. And so starting young and getting young people involved in this work. And I think also it's about being unapologetic about it, right? You are your own person, right? And you know what is meant for you, and you know the sankofas and the lessons that you need to bring into the work that you are doing. And so just, I've been so unapologetic about it. I'm like, it don't need to make no sense to no one but me. And so if it makes sense to you and you are clear about your path and the vision that you have, which you clearly are, because look what we have here, then just being unapologetic about that, right? And I think that being unapologetic allows other people to then vision and come into that work. So just continue being unapologetically Black. That's all I can say.
Listen, that's the goal every day on these BIM streets and in my life. Something that you mentioned during your talk was cultural organizing. So can you, I don't know, give us the short version of that, and how do you move, I guess, from whatever the regular organizing folks have been doing to this concept of cultural organizing?
Yeah, so like regular, organizing, a lot of it is like building relationships, and you're trying to change do a political transformation with folks to bring them into the work and the, strategy or goals that you see. And, cultural organizing is really about community, understanding the needs of the community, but also understanding and realizing the strengths of that community and playing on those strengths, right? But it's also about how do we interject things like science with art, with performance. And so it's not so like rigid in nature. And cultural organizing is also about collaboration. So thinking about how can we think about different aspects of life that seem to be disparate or not connected, and really bridging those together. And so that's how I view cultural organizing. It's about community, it's about art, it's about collaboration, and it's really about like empowering and uplifting people, and in particular Black folks.
I love that. I think that is so true. And I think it's exactly what we need, because I definitely, again, go thinking about the science world, when we think about our community outreach, I will say, I can't even say really engagement. It's just outreach. And it's, you come in thinking the community is at the bare minimum. Like the community doesn't have anything. They don't have any thoughts or ideas. You're just coming in trying to put all of what we think is best practices without really involving them. So I really love this thought of what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's really about like going into community or communities that you're a part of and just talking to folks. Black folks have so much knowledge and are so brilliant, and we need to uplift and empower that brilliance. And how can we put that into Black and marine science or other, initiatives that we're doing? So many Black people have visions of what they want to see for the future, and how do we bring that into the work that we're doing?
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. I see we have Dr. Davis here. That means the time is low. So I'll pass it on over back to her.
Thank you. That was so wonderful. I know Dr. Tiara Moore said that she had to hold back tears. I was just letting them flow. It was so beautiful. I'm sure the BIMS audience really appreciates your perspective and you coming and being unapologetically Black. We appreciate it. So thank you so much for that. Thank you to everyone else for joining us today. If you have any questions about today's keynote, please make sure that you reach out to Dominique Thompson. You can reach her on her email. It's Nique, NIQUE.Tom, THOM @gmail.com. So that's Nique.tom @gmail.com. Our moderator, Dr. Tiara Moore, you can Follow her on social media at curly_scientist. You can follow me on social media at Dr. Ocean24. And so thank you again for tuning in. Make sure that you follow Black and Marine Science for more events this week. Tomorrow we have our BIMS Ball, and right after this we have BIMS Care. That's going to be tonight from 6 to 6:30 p.m. So make sure that you tune in for that on our YouTube channel. And last but not least, make sure that you tune in tomorrow for the National Aquarium. We're going to be doing special BIMS giveaways, and a lot of those questions are going to be based on the keynote today. So thank you again